Good morning and welcome to you all from all over the world, Europe, Texas, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, District 7230. Welcome to our district membership meeting. I'm the Governor-elect Marty Shulman and the interim district membership chair. Today, we're presenting before you on a topic of survival of your club and making you an ambassador for a stronger club experience. It is my pleasure today to introduce today's speaker, Catherine Brown. Catherine is a proven, successful motivator, trainer, coach, and mentor in the important field of sales. She's an accomplished author, and the compelling title of her newest book, How Good Humans Sell, is both attractive and self-actualizing. We hope that you agree. And for all of us who stay focused in this next hour, we hope that you see the obvious call to action. With that, I introduce to you all Catherine Brown.
Thank you all so much. It's my absolute pleasure to be here. I'm Catherine, and I am going to share my screen to get us started. I have learned in my Zoom speaking experience, especially over the last couple of years, as we've all had more Zoom opportunities than we expected, that it is important to remember that people have a lot going on in their life. And I have learned that it's smart to communicate both on the front side and the back side how you can get in touch with me if you have questions about something I've said, or you like what I've said and you want to follow me. This is my corporate website, which is called extraboldsales.com. That's the name of my sales training firm. And this is my LinkedIn profile. And I can be found on most social media platforms, but LinkedIn by far is my most used platform because the companies I consult to and train are typically companies that sell to other businesses. So business to business salespeople do a lot on LinkedIn these days, and that's where I tend to hang out. So Marty, thank you for that generous introduction. And I'm going to mention there's a couple more things for context, and then I'm going to dive right in. This is how this will work. I'm going to speak for 15 to 20 minutes. Hopefully, you can take notes. Go ahead and type your questions in the chat. I will pause, we'll stop screen sharing, we'll have some discussion, and then I will continue so that you don't have to save your questions all the way to the end. It also gives me an opportunity to make any adjustments that I can tell will be helpful based on people's understanding or questions of where I am so far in what I'm covering. As Marty mentioned, this is a book I released this summer. It's called How Good Humans Sell, and it is available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle. I'm referencing this because I think it was this idea of being a good human and probably our shared appreciation of how I believe people are all on a journey. And one of the things that Rotary does is it gives people a way to serve and become, in a way, a better and better human by serving other people in community that's actually, although an individual club, part of something much bigger in Rotary International. So I really love the language you all use. I hope this idea of being a good human and asking people to be a good human through participation in Rotary is our focus of our conversation today. So I am super grateful to my friend Amir, who introduced me and gave us the opportunity to visit here today. So this is what we're going to cover. I know that I had a different title, and I will be covering what's in the title, but this talk is basically broken into two parts. The first is we want to understand what people who might join our clubs want. What do they want? And then we want to communicate in a way that helps give them what they want. Now, I have been selling long enough to believe that, especially when it comes to a service or a membership organization, I don't think people always know what they want. But I do think they know what they want. And because we love, honor, and respect other humans, we allow them to communicate what that is. And then as we have more influence and opportunity and build real relationships with people, we might have the opportunity to influence what they come to want. There's a little bit of this positive cycle. Let's say that somebody comes into Rotary and they don't have the initial motivations and intrinsic appreciation of the big picture that Rotary does, but they will over time grow that. I really believe that, because I think that we've seen lots of examples of people evolving and enjoying and appreciating your mission, and as they become changed by serving with you. So this is how we're going to address this. The first part is, what do people in this day and age want? We'll have an opportunity to discuss if you agree with some of my suggestions or you don't, and it's okay if you don't. And then I'll come back and I'll say, this is how I would invite people and how I think are some ways we could give them what they want. Again, the reason I referenced the book a minute ago is because many of these ideas, including the flow of how I write emails, how I introduce topics, how I initiate with people, those ideas are in the book. And so anything that you might want in addition to receiving this PowerPoint later or asking questions of me might also be able to be found there. All right. So I started out to prepare for this talk by thinking about this. I thought, I live in Houston, Texas. Mary, Marty, Amir, Eric, others already asked and said, are you a member of Rotary? I said, I'm not a member of Rotary. And if you can believe it, I've actually never been asked to be a member of Rotary. So it was very interesting to me to see my friend Amir's devotion to the group, dedication, long service, and to see how meaningful it is as sort of a component in the meaningful giving life that he's built personally and professionally, because I like Amir and I respect him. And I had some impression of what Rotary was, but I wasn't really sure. The reason I'm taking the time to tell you that story is because I think I'm exactly the kind of person that you would want to invite to your group, right? So I'm a female. I'm 49 years old. I own my own business, actually have more than one business. I'm an accomplished speaker. I travel. And if you study my LinkedIn profile, you'll see evidence that I'm already service-minded to the Houston community. I already am a board member and volunteer at a number of places. So if you were checking me out, right, if you were looking, would she be a good recruit? All evidence would point to that being true. So what would I do next? Well, if someone invited me to Rotary, the first thing I would do is I would go to the internet and I would look at what Rotary is, because I would think, well, I think I know, but I'm not sure I know. Turns out I didn't know. Again, I'm telling you this story because this is true of the people that you will invite. They don't know. They don't know what Rotary is. They know the name. Lots of people in business know the name. And I do recognize the circular symbol, but I didn't know. And so the first thing is check your assumption at the door that they know anything, or that language you might typically use to attract them will sound familiar. It may not. I suggest it probably won't. So then I started Googling, what is Rotary? What are the objectives of Rotary? And literally this sentence came up. That's why I put it here, because I wanted you to know, through the power of Google, in 3 minutes, on some page, I can go reverse engineer and find it and tell you where it was. But on a page, I literally lifted, it said that the objective is to encourage and foster the ideals of service as a basis of worthy enterprise. So that's a whole other conversation for another time. I'm not completely clear what as the basis of worthy enterprise is later. That's a discussion for another time. But I did get the idea that we're encouraging and fostering the ideal of service. So you've invited me to visit. I've Googled, I have a very basic idea like this. And I'm asking myself the following questions. This is what I'm telling you, what I have learned in 25 years of teaching development officers, being a recruiter, and selling all kinds of products and services into all kinds of industries. This is what people do. They start to ask questions like this. Is this something I should do? Now, other people might ask that another way. I have a very strong should driver, strong sense of obligation. frankly. So at my age and in my stage of life, I am already thinking about legacy and service and things like that. So I'm thinking literally, am I going to add Rotary to the portfolio of my life, and what is it going to mean for me? Some of you might hear me say that and you might think, well, that's offensive because Rotary is about serving other people. It's not about what's in it for you. But what I have learned as a human who's walked the earth for 49 years and as a professional trainer is that people are all basically the same. They look different, they sound different, they live in different parts of the world, but they want similar things. And remembering what people want and tying that to how does Rotary help them get what they want will grow your clubs. Let me give you an example. If you had psychology in high school or you took Psychology 101, you might remember in the first half of the last century, Abraham Maslow was a psychologist. And this is what he calls the human behavior, human motivation pyramid. This has been a super useful tool for me in the pandemic because those of you that have anything to do with business development, fundraising, or any kind of initiating you have to do with people, you know that things in our industries were just topsy-turvy the first part of the pandemic because people were seized up, literally trying to figure out, am I safe, right? Am I healthy? What's happening with my children? They're coming back and I have to homeschool them. What does the world look like? Literally, will I be healthy? Will I be well? And in a group this size, I'm sure some of you know people who were greatly impacted by the pandemic and might even have had loss of life. And I'm so sorry that that's probably the case. So very sincerely, even in a country that has great opportunity and where we all enjoy tremendous wealth compared to some other parts of the world, even if we were in the higher parts where we spent most of our energy thinking about what brings me joy, love, and belonging, and I'm on my path to my very best self, which is what I'm calling self-actualization, when the pandemic hit, we all went boom to the bottom because we literally weren't safe. So the people we want to sell to aren't safe. The people we want to recruit aren't safe. People are stressed. I know that eradicating disease is one of Rotary's greatest accomplishments, ever. And so there are people around the world that you serve who don't have much opportunity to move up through the pyramid ever because they live most of their life in the bottom part. And that's part of what you're doing in creating opportunity and alleviating suffering. Those of us in the United States, and if you're a member of Rotary, high probability chance that you spend most of your time under normal circumstances thinking about, how do I become the person that I want to become? Who are the people that will go there with me? What does that journey look like? We're moving toward what Maslow called self-actualization. Self-actualization is individual, it's personal, it's subjective, and it's up to them. It's not up to us. It's up to each person. So what I tell people when I do sales training is I say, the best thing you can do is understand what journey they're saying they're trying to go to and see if your product, service, or membership helps them get where they're trying to go. Let me show you a couple other images that might help to show you that. One of the things that I learned in soliciting for so many different types of products and services over the years. And when I say soliciting, don't think about people who used to call during dinner, when I was and sell magazines when I was a little girl. Okay, I'm not talking about that kind of soliciting. For 17 years, I ran a very high-end firm that provided contract sales resources to other companies. And we scheduled sales appointments and acted as contract staff for companies that hired us. And these were $1 million products. I'm not exaggerating, $1 million software, huge enterprise decisions, representing big law firms, big CPA firms, strategy consulting firms, things like this. So high ticket items. It did not matter what product or service we were representing. The questions that people would ask us who were prospects, who were potential customers, they always fell in these three buckets. They were about, is this going to make me comfortable? Is anything you're saying making me uncomfortable? Is what you're proposing to me, does it feel risky? Is it a risky proposition in some way? Or can I see it full of guarantees and it's kind of a slam dunk decision? And the last one on the left side is status. If it's a business to business transaction, that CFO is thinking, even if they never articulate it to you as the seller, they're thinking to themselves, I have so much weighing on me. I don't want to make a bad decision. Everyone's counting on me. It's my job to set direction. I better not screw this up. So if you're selling accounting software to that person, you need to do everything you can to understand every human is looking to be important, to have purpose, to have people who sit under them, who they are leading, to be able to have a model to follow and to lead well. Anything we offer that does not address these three things from the perspective of the prospect, okay, this is not about your perspective, this is about their perspective, then that's the main thing we should be considering. So for example, if I were to be invited to Rotary and I were thinking of these categories, these are the more specific questions that you might hear that tie to this diagram. Every human being is thinking through themselves, to themselves, when they're watching a presentation, when they're having a conversation and someone is explaining something to them. As I'm speaking to you, people are thinking in their own brains at the same time. Now, how does this feel? Okay, if I go along with this, how will I look? Is adopting these ideas, is that going to make me more fulfilled or less fulfilled? Is she making this hard or easy? How badly does our club need to try something new? Okay, how's my life going to change? How's the people I care about? How's their life going to change? Is this idea, does this seem to have any real grounding? Like, is this going to last, or is this seem fly by night? And then a lot of people are driven by, how will I be protected? So as a potential prospect, you might say, well, what would that look like, Catherine, for Rotary? I'm thinking about these questions too. I'm thinking, I only have so much time. I have a pretty good idea about what I want my legacy to look like, because I'm about halfway through, halfway through my life. Hopefully I'll live really long. My great grandmother lived to be 97. But I'm looking and saying, there's only so much of Catherine to go around. And so is Rotary a tool? And I mean that in the very best way, not in a negative sense, but is it a vehicle? Is it a tool? Is it providing a path for me to get to the top of that pyramid? These questions are the summary of what I have learned in 25 years are the key questions people always ask themselves. So one thing that would be really cool would be for you to think about, when people ask, what are the FAQs? What are the frequently asked questions about Rotary? See which ones line up to this, or think of things that people say that are objections, and you can reverse engineer and ask yourself, that's interesting. We often get that objection. Is the objection really something that's about one of these things? Chances are very, very high that ultimately they are. Okay, so the reason I'm harping on this and spending so much time in the first half of this talk is because when you can help people connect the dots that your club, Rotary International, will address these things for them from their perspective, and you ask thoughtful, open-ended questions that get a dialogue going, it's not about you presenting all the benefits of Rotary. You will have an opportunity to do that, and they will see that when they come. But I'm talking about initiating with people and getting them to come, asking open-ended, thoughtful questions about what they're trying to do at this moment in their life, and whether Rotary will get them there is a way to go about that, I think. And I plan to model some of that for you next. Okay, so let's talk for a second. I told you I have pretty strong goal clarity. I work on that a lot myself. I'm an entrepreneur and I have employees, so I really feel responsible to set some direction and have a sense of where's my company trying to go, where am I going personally. I'm about to be an empty nester, and so that is also this life stage that some of you have been through too, where you get to think, oh, I have another chapter, what's that going to look like? So I have a pretty keen sense of what my evaluation criteria would be if I were to visit. But one of the things that Mary, Marty, and Amir and I discussed in preparing for this is that people who are coming to you, they have all kinds of motivations, right? Somebody might think that Rotary's primary objective is for them to be able to network with like-minded people, but they might be thinking primarily about the business connections. It might be that they are actually very in tune with their own desire for service already. And so they might want to make a difference locally, and they see that you ran a campaign locally, or they learned about a local project. And so that got their interest, and they think, I already feel like I want to be a better local citizen. And so they might want to make a difference locally. They might be looking for a mentor, right? It might be that someone they know, love, and trust is already in Rotary, and they think, if I go to Rotary, I'll get to spend more time with this person. That could be true. What are other reasons someone might want to come? So that's somewhat rhetorical, but I also want you to be thinking about it. And the part, as we were preparing for this, what I want to communicate here before we take a break for the first part of Q&A is that it's very important that we don't judge the motives of other people if they don't align with what made us want to come to Rotary. Now, some people might just need to be straight out disqualified. I'm not saying it's right for everyone, but let's say that someone is pretty overt. They think it's actually a business networking group as its primary objective. That would be something that would be very understandable from my perspective as an outsider, that someone could imagine that. May I suggest to you that instead of trying to re-engineer their vision, you go with that, recognizing that all of these things, looking for a mentor, working with like-minded people, want to make a difference locally, or even possibly some of the other answers you have, it's okay for them to come in without having the global picture, because here's what happens, right? I'm going to jump ahead and show you this. A person's thinking about their path to their own self-actualization. They're saying, you know what I need? I need a mentor. I know so-and-so is the president of Rotary, and if I go to that, I'm going to get to spend time with them. Great. That's fine. It's fine, because what will happen is, number two here, in service, in doing things together, people will grow and evolve to appreciate the principles and the bigger picture. This is very much like how someone comes into taking a job. When I was a recruiter, what drives someone to take the job is not always the mission statement of the company. And that's okay, because they will come to love the company if it's something worth loving, and they will grow in their appreciation of it. Similarly, when you sell a product or service to someone, the thing that you think is the thing that's going to attract them is, I'm continually surprised. Quick example of that, and then we'll go to questions. I have 3 ways people can work with me in addition to reading my book. And I do my best based on someone's title, role, responsibility, size of company they work with. I do my best to make a match and then ask questions that would lead to a discussion of whether this particular offering is the right one. If that doesn't match to them, and that's not the reason that they want to work together, or we work together and I go back later and say, so what made you choose to have me come work with your company? I'm really pretty much always surprised by what they say because there are people's own ways of articulating what they value, what addresses their why for being, what helps them on the journey of where they're trying to go, metaphorically speaking, in their profession or personally. It's their own language and it's their own path. And so one of the things I think that could be a risk for you is, because of the long legacy of the organization, it could be very tempting to do a lot of presenting about the benefits, when really what we want to do is we want to get them to tell us how they will decide, because you have a chance to influence people when they join you. But if they don't join you, you don't have a chance to influence people. So I'm pretty close to where I wanted to be time-wise for the first break, I think. Is it Frank or Eric? What's happening next?
Frank, I'm next.
So I apologize. I got interrupted there. Catherine, so we would love everybody to drop questions in, please. And as we go through the session, we'll ask Catherine questions and we'll get them answered. But Marty has teed us up, Catherine.
Okay.
So how do you weigh the risk of asking versus the feeling of failure to launch on choosing an appropriate candidate for membership?
Okay, ask me it slow.
There's a lot there. So let's try that again.
Okay, go ahead.
So how do you weigh the risk of asking versus the feeling of failure to launch on choosing an appropriate candidate for membership? It's a good question, Marty. Marty, it's like you've done this before or had this question. It has been a daunting question to ask. Actually, it's a great question.
Yeah. So Marty, so I'm going to my coaching consulting mode here. So I would say first, I would break those questions apart and I would say, what is your perception of the risk of asking? The first part of that.
Okay, good that you asked me to elaborate. I think a lot of people feel that there's a barrier that they have to overcome in order to verbally express to another person that they think they would be a good fit in their Rotary Club. The typical default I've heard around the zone is people talk about the wonderful projects they do, the how. And that frightens people because it just may not be enough. And if they fail to launch, if the candidate says, "No, it's not for me," and lets it go, would that stop them from asking again? So how do you weigh that? And what really should we be looking at when we approach a person that we think is a good fit in establishing the ease of doing it?
That's a great question, Marty. It's a really great question. So in the way that you're describing failure to launch, I think like what I see in selling, and I'm equating selling here to, let me start over. In business development, when you want to invite someone to have a call with you, I would say that in some respects, that is like asking people to have a conversation about Rotary or inviting them to visit. And I'm not saying it's a perfect example, but I'll show you in the second half some ways I might do that, and you can modify them for your own use. The first thing I would say, Marty, is that it's really important to remember that being not interested in something according to the way you described it is not the same as being rejected. Because outright, one of the most base, common, foundational, same thing across all people across the planet is that everyone's afraid of ending up alone. Nobody wants to be alone. No one wants to be kicked out of the camp. Nobody wants to be expelled. I mean, metaphorically speaking. And so that driver to be in community and be accepted is so high. The other thing that I see that really helps me to be a good recruiter for things I do, like I have a local nonprofit I do a lot with, and I invite a lot of people to a lot of things for that. One of the things that helps me is to practice noticing whether I am making up a story. So again, let's say you ask someone to visit and they have said no. There's all kinds of criteria. I actually talk about this in the book. It's not in the scope of our call today. And I know we have other questions, so this will be the last part of my answer. But when you think about someone being qualified or being a good prospect, their goals have to align with you. The timing has to be right. They have to be in a position to decide. You have competition because it's not like they're not other nonprofits. You have to understand how they would weigh what to do versus another choice. And then how will they decide is also a consideration. For example, if you have things that are after hours and a person has a significant other, they would need to consult with that person if they were going to be thoughtful to their family. So that's part of the decision process. If any one of those, Marty, if any four of what I call the 5 magic topics that I just rattled off, if any of those are not aligned at this moment, the answer might be no right now. But that doesn't mean it's a global no. And in sales language, I call that a marketing lead versus a sales lead. I firmly believe a lot of people that haven't worked with me yet, that I've talked with, I really mean the word yet. And so there's a lot of shift of mindset that has to happen there.
So yet is the key word to telling someone, hey, let's build a relationship. Let's turn that no yet to yes, right? Hey, there's a couple of other questions.
Yeah.
Amir is specifically asking about the younger generation, which this comes up a lot, especially in the nonprofit membership world. How do we help younger generation travel across what we're going to call today the generational bridge when they think about our organization as a whole?
Right. That's a great question, Amir. There's so much in marketing. If any of you are marketing professionals, you can ping me about this later. There's so much in marketing about telling your story. And it is powerful to say, do you know that we eradicated polio? That is powerful. I'm not saying that's not powerful. I will tell you, there is a ton of research, and my personal experience also validates for me that people are asking that, is this something I should participate in? Is this something I want to participate in? They're focusing on their own concerns more than they're interested in a really long version of the story of why they should do it. And I think a generational difference that I'll bring up here is, if it were me and I were recruiting to my Rotary Club, what I would do is I would make a real effort to show an interest in that person as a human being, as an individual, understanding their goals, their personal and professional goals, asking about those with genuine curiosity, and then seeing if you can bridge that to whether Rotary can help fix that or not. That's literally just done in a casual conversation. This doesn't have to be formal, but I'm going to contrast that. And I think this is a risk for those of you that have been in Rotary a really long time. I'm just going to say it. Having the authority of having been around a long time is only one of a few considerations for that younger buyer. Leading with, we've been around for over 100 years, we've done all these following things. That is not the main reason they will join you. That is probably not even a top 4 reason they will join you. And that is just like, in my opinion, it's just like in sales training, when someone shows up and says, can I show you this presentation in PowerPoint? And they talk the whole time. And then in the last 5 minutes, they say, does this resonate with you? Does this sound like problems you're having? Nobody wants to sit through that. Nobody likes that, especially younger buyers. So it needs to be very conversational and sincerely interested in their why, in their goals, and then asking to yourself, is Rotary a way for them to get there? Probably it is, because it does a lot of cool things, but you have to ask. Anything else?
I see a lot of nodding.
Okay. I got a heart from Nick.
I'm sitting here admiring your bookshelf. So of course your book is highlighted right behind you. But Honor Bound is another great read if anybody has it. That book is sitting on my bookshelf.
Oh my gosh, my husband will be so delighted, Frank. Thank you for telling me that.
Read from a speaker that I had the great opportunity to listen to. Anyway,
That's so cool.
Another question
So
for
cool.
Sue.
We are an author couple, so actually it's hard to see, but in the upper one, he's one ahead of me. So there's one more that my husband Ryan's done. So I'm behind the curve now. I got to write another one.
We're gonna have to work on that.
I will.
We have a question from Sue. How can we get people feeling comfortable to take the time to learn motives for prospects to attend or join rather than moving to a sales pitch? So you got
ask the first part again.
How do we get people feeling comfortable to take time to learn the motives for prospects rather than just moving straight into a sales pitch?
Great. Thank you for that. I feel like you teed that up for me just so generously. This really is about that your motive has to be sincerely to get to know them. I mean, you have to care about them as a person. And I'm assuming you do because you're here in Rotary. But I think that when we feel nervous, or if some of us are less experienced in selling, or maybe we literally were taught to show up with the PowerPoint and talk the whole time. I mean, that was a way of selling, you know, that I was taught a couple decades ago. But remember, do you remember when I opened the presentation and I said, so I have never been asked to be in Rotary, and I thought I knew what Rotary was. So what did I do? I went to the internet to read about it. People, you know, there's different ways that people research and operate. And a referral and a personal invitation from someone who seems like a warm, interested in me, thoughtful person is the first part before the reasons why to go to Rotary. So in the interest of time, please connect with me in the back channel, you know, afterwards. And I'd love to talk about that more. Hopefully going to model a couple examples of what an invitation might look like that you could use.
Awesome. Thank you. So
we good, Frank? You ready to keep going?
Yeah, let's keep on going. And I'm going to remind everyone, keep dropping your questions in here. Catherine's going to take another break a little bit later for some Q&A. So
super. I'll keep going then. Thank you again for the opportunity. Okay, so we've covered, back to Sue's question, Sue's saying, how do I, so I don't pitch. Yeah? Are we good?
We're good.
Okay, everybody be sure to mute yourself until we do the Q&A time again. So Sue is asking, how do I keep from pitching and having that feel salesy and doing presenting? I want to have a natural conversation. So we have to remember what we learned when we were 8 years old on the playground. I mean, just being a nice person, initiating with someone, asking about them, getting to know them, being sincerely interested as a friend, those components are all still there. Because as soon as you start talking about something you want them to do, even an invitation, do you want me to come with you to this breakfast? Do you want me to come with you to this lunch? We're doing a service project. Would you like to come with me to do it? I'm literally asking myself these questions. I'm thinking, do I have time for this? Will I make time for this? Does this fulfill my values? If I do this, what am I saying no to? I'm always, all people are always thinking of these things. They're always thinking of these things. So helping them connect the dots to see if Rotary can help that be true is part of a natural organic conversation. We'll get to more of that in a few minutes. So let me go on and pick up here. So I talked about the evolution. I almost put a slide in here, but I don't know if enough people have seen this. I'll make a very brief reference, and you can connect with me offline if you have also become a Ted Lasso maniac. In my family, we're becoming Ted Lasso maniacs. Apple TV has the show called Ted Lasso, Lasso. Jason Sudeikis swept the Emmys. I'm just so happy for him because wrote it, produced it, is the main actor. He's amazing. He has this line in a scene in a show that's become a t-shirt, bumper sticker, posters. It says, be curious, not judgmental. Be curious, not judgmental. And when I think about what someone's motives might be and whether they're thinking about whether Rotary helps match their motives, if you love Rotary and you've been in it forever and you are in it for the big picture and all the global reasons, you might be hearing me and think, that sounds narcissistic, that sounds selfish, that's not why we do what we do. We want people who love their city and love the world and want to eradicate disease and see service as our common work of humanity. That is something they can grow into. In generosity and grace, we give room for people to grow and change, and they will not all come in with their perfect motives because nobody has those. Everybody, whether they articulate them or not, has motives, and some of them are even unknown to the person themselves. Some things are non-conscious and automatic. But the reason I started with that Venn diagram is because I'm saying, even if they don't volunteer any of that to you, it's still true. It's still true. So people are on a path and they can move toward being global citizens through Rotary, but it might take time. It will take time, I should say. Okay, so let's keep going. I really love this quote. I am getting to know this company. I'm starting to do some work with them. And I don't know if they've made their way to New York, if you're very familiar with them, but there is a company called Noonday. The website is noondaycollective.com. They're the world's largest fair trade jewelry company. They contract around the world, literally around the whole globe, with groups of artisans to produce the jewelry and accessories that they sell through trunk shows. And there's this beautiful book, I have it right here, that I would really encourage anyone to read. It's very compatible with Rotary's mission, I think, in their global citizenship ideas, but it's called Imperfect Courage. Jessica Honegger is the author. I'll show you. It looks like it has thumbprints on the front, Imperfect Courage. And this is a quote from this book. She says, she's talking about all people. She said, we all want the same things: to be seen, to be connected, to be known, and to be loved. We want wholeness, we want connection, we want hope. Rotary is by design a place that fulfills this basic human goal. But the way a person comes in and how in tune they are with the fact that these are true statements is going to be a wide range on a spectrum. They're not all going to come and make it easy for you and bare their soul and say, I'm looking to be whole and connected. Okay, I know they're not going to do that, but it is true. So as you, because you are nice to them, because you take an interest in them, because you invite them, you model this, inviting them into community where they will have connection and be a person who receives hope, these basic desires they want, as well as be a hope giver. And that gives people purpose, which is part of what helps them move up the top of the pyramid with Maslow's triangle. See yourself as a success connector. See yourself as a success connector. What I mean by that is by making the introductions. Here's another idea. This literally just came to me. If you are having a visit with someone in another networking or group, or there's someone you know from work, and as you get to know them and you know something that interests that person, you literally can have that be the reason you invite them to Rotary. You can say, so let's say you're in IT and the other person's in accounting. You could say, you know, John, I really see how you've invested in your own professional development and how you're growing and, you know, have aspirations to be having more opportunities in accounting and move up toward a big controller and a CFO. I have a good friend through Rotary who actually has her own CPA firm, and she used to work for a big firm and now she's self-employed. She's a little bit further ahead career-wise. I really think you'd like her. We're in Rotary together. Would you like to come to this with me? And I'd like to introduce you to my friend. That is a perfectly legitimate reason to get someone to come to your club. If you, in sincerity, care about connecting your friends, okay, your acquaintances. You do not have to go into all of the history of Rotary and all of the missions of what you do to get someone to try it. So when you see yourself as a success connector, then it makes you say, well, what does Amir think success is? If I'm a friend of this person, I need to find that out and ask, because it could be any number of answers, and that's totally legitimate. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how we would actually do some asking. I'm, again, telling you as a possible recruit, I'm telling you what I would respond well to, and also what has worked really well for other types of development, recruitment, and selling initiation that I've taught. The first thing is, if you take anything from this presentation, please write this down. The principle of them before me means that when you speak in a conversation, and especially when you write an email, make the first sentence be about the other person, not about you, and not about Rotary. Here's how this would look. Instead of saying, Rotary International is would you like to go to lunch with me? You're starting with something about them, which I will model for you in just a second. By default, we actually all tend to talk about ourselves first. And so embodying this them before me, it's certainly consistent with Rotary's values and your principles. What I'm saying is it needs to make its way into the way that you talk, ask, and write. So every time you write something, go back later. You don't have to do it right now, and I don't have it on the screen. If you go back later and you look at the invitation to this event and this talk, it embodies this principle. I literally wrote multiple versions of how to describe what we would do in the talk. And I thought, from the perspective of the person who would attend, how do I talk about them before I talk about my own authority to discuss it? I literally practiced this principle. So them before me, them before me, them before me. Write it, put a sticky, put it on your phone, do whatever you need to do. If you do that, you will win friends and influence people, and you will bring people to Rotary because they will see that you are talking about them before you talk about yourself or even this group that you love. One of the resources I'm going to give you following up today is what's called the customer focused value proposition. Now, this is in my book. And this is something that is literally a sales tool. So you want to use it as you see fit. Some of you will love it. Some of you will think, that feels forced. It's fine. Think about this as idea as a framework. When we have frameworks and we don't write things from scratch, then we don't talk so much. And we are succinct and we're to the point. And this fill in the blank formula is like the old Mad Libs game that I used to play when I would lie in the back of the station wagon in my mother's orange Datsun, not wearing a seatbelt on road trips. Marty's like, I was that parent. Okay, didn't wear a seatbelt for a long time. It wasn't required. It wasn't law. My parents didn't like them. So I would play the game Mad Libs, which is fill in the blank. So this is the fill in the blank formula. You are the guide. Your prospect to Rotary is the client, okay, in this scenario. So there's a client that has a problem. They want something. What do they want? I want mentors. I want to know people. I just moved here. I'm looking for meaningful connections. I need a place to serve. I want to be promoted and I need to be in a service organization to do that. Whatever their motives are, they've got a problem. You are the guide. In this analogy, in the movie, you're Gandalf, okay? In the movie, you're Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're not Luke Skywalker. In the movie, you are the person who comes alongside and helps them. And you have a plan. You're like, hey, I know this thing. You might think it's cool. You call them to action, which might be to come to the lunch. And then they meet people, which leads to their success. So there's literally this fill in the blank formula that I will provide to you that you can practice using your own words. But what it does when you practice it, you all, is it makes sure that you talk about them before you talk about yourself. That's why I give people a template. All right. So I'm going to give that to you. We don't have any more time than that to go through it in the time we have, but I will give this to you, and it would be my pleasure through LinkedIn or email or whatever for you to ask me about it, for me to answer more questions. So this is what the sheet looks like, and I'm going to literally give it to you. I'm literally going to give it to you afterwards, so you'll have that as a reference, which, by the way, if you're in sales or business development of any kind, this is an amazing tool for for-profit organizations as well. Okay, so here are the two examples. I'm going to read these two examples, and then we're going to do Q&A again. This is me embodying them before me. This is the scenario. I'm going to go back because I don't want you to read this. I want you to listen to me. And when you show a screen too early, people read it. Imagine this scenario. You have someone that you want to invite to visit a meeting for the first time. I personally don't do anything that is not scheduled on my calendar. I will not remember if you do not ask me and get it on my calendar. Because I operate that way, I assume other people my age and stage of life operate that way, and I like email. So I'm not saying you have to do it this way. I'm saying this would work for someone like me. I would send an email that follows up from a conversation, or it could be that you literally see someone in your community you want to solicit from scratch. Great, that's fine. I'll show you how to do it. But I would send an email that's driving to a call to action to a visit, and then I would follow up with a phone call. Again, you can reverse the order. You don't have to do this. You can take the principles from it and turn it into something you will use. But this is what would work with me. So I have two emails where I am you inviting me to an event. All right. So I have, in this template, I have name. You mentioned when we spoke maybe it's at X event, but you're looking for a way to get to know other business leaders in the community who care about our town. I'm a member of a local club of Rotary International, a global service community. Our club service project this year is to do X. Would you like to be my guest at a meeting on X date or an X time, fill in the blank, to see what Rotary is about? If we don't connect by before the end of the week, I'll call you Friday and see if you would like to join me. Have a great week. Okay, a few things I want you to see. Number one, we started with them. We started with them first. We said, you said this. You said this was a goal. Hey, would you like to come this thing with me? I think this might help connect to that goal. The last part, which is kind of going to Marty's question, which is a majorly effective sales technique. Okay, and I mean that in the best way, not in a sleazy, cheesy, manipulative way. If you say what you'll do next, and you can use your own words to do it, then you will actually do it and you will not forget. So I'm sending the email, and if they don't reply, I'm not going to make it weird. I'm not going to make it mean anything. If you're like me, you get dozens and dozens and dozens of emails a day. I owe our friend Amir a response right now. It's literally at the bottom of page 2 on my email. I get so many emails. So I might just not have responded and it slipped out of my mind. So when you say, hey, I'm also going to try to catch you by phone, or I'll send you a quick text, that is such a gift to me, because it's not on purpose that I'm not responding. So I like that part at the end. You do not have to use it, but if you use it, it will help you follow up. That's what I've learned. All right. Next part, next email, one more example. Now this is, you read about someone in the paper and you're like, you know what? I really would like that person to be in Rotary. Or you see them in a trade publication, or you know each other from another group, but you know them, but they don't know you. So this could be something you could send. You can name. You and I have not met, and I noticed that you practice service to our community through X way. So you reference how you picked them. Why me is the question you're answering. I saw, heard, or read X. So this answers the question. Since I don't know you, Marty's sending me something. I'm like, I don't know, Marty. Marty says, hey, I heard you on the blah, blah, blah podcast. I'd be like, oh, that's so cool. Cool. Right now, you got me hooked. I'm reading. I'm a member of blank town club of Rotary International, wondering if you would like to visit our club. Our club's growing. You seem to share some of our club's values. Blah, blah, blah. We meet at this day and time. Would you like to be my guest? If we don't connect, I'll call your office and see if you'd like to join me. Have a great week. It could be as simple as that. This is them before me. I didn't hear the whole history of Rotary. It felt like you actually cared about me. You've done a little research, and you said what you do to make it easy for me to say yes. I would respond to either of these, especially if you tried a second time, so I didn't forget. Happy to answer questions about that. So here's what, just in the interest of time, because I know we have some other things we're going to watch. I'm going to send you the template afterwards. You're going to get this PowerPoint with this email examples. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I have my contact information here. Again, I'll show you all of these templates, and information is available in How Good Humans Sell. And this is my contact information again, which you can take a screenshot of. Also, you can find me. Notice that on LinkedIn, there's tons of Catherine Brown. So you'll see that it's Catherine Lee Brown in the actual URL address. I think it's time for questions.
Eric.
All right. Folks, I don't see any written questions in the chat box. If anybody would like to ask a question directly to Catherine, that would be fantastic. You can raise your hand if I'll spot you, or you can hit the reactions button and raise your hand that way, and I'll spot you. So if anybody has anything you'd like to ask, that'd be fantastic. Catherine's here now. All right, Amir.
I am the most introverted member of the Rotary organization.
I know this is hard for you, Amir.
I just want to thank you, Catherine. And I'd like to aspire, or actually I'd like to inspire all of us who are seeing this presentation to make it our mission to take Catherine's message to our clubs and our districts because if we change our stance from this is who we are, this is what we have done, and we're going to be so great for you to join us, to this is what we've done, we would like you to join us to help us grow, because we have been one of the most progressive organizations on this planet. We have moved to including women, to including children, to including young people, to include all these different things that we have done. And it has only been because new members, younger members joined. And I hope that this will become our mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Amir. Anybody else have any comments or questions for Catherine?
I see a couple things. Oh, I'm sorry, Cynthia. I see a couple people in the chat who have had trouble grabbing the contact info, so I'm just going to put it all in the chat again next, so you'll have it there too.
Catherine, I just want to say that I watched Ted Lasso. I watched one episode and I ended up binge watching 2 seasons in a week. So it is a great show. If anybody hasn't seen it yet, yeah, Apple.
It is. It's in season 2. I will warn you, it's a little bit unfamily friendly in some of its references. So I was glad to have big kids who were not like hovering around, because there are some sexual references, but it is so dear and so human. Yeah, thanks for that.
Any last thoughts on member engagement?
Well, I think you need to know the member engagement piece of our presentations this year is upcoming in the spring, and so I would invite you to tune in and join us as we do that piece in the spring, because it'll be talking about new clubs and how they fit into your neighborhoods and how you need to perceive them not as nasty competition, but as a way to perform more excellently in what your club does through member engagement, which then results in member retention. So we are doing an in-depth study of that that'll be produced in the spring. This one's all about attraction today. So
Sure.
I think
Marty,
I want to thank you, Catherine.
Yeah, Marty, I don't mind, if you don't mind, I can answer just a couple sentences. I think that question list of what's in it for me and the motives and values Venn diagram, I think it's still related even to member engagement, because if someone was more actively engaged and is declining, something has happened that just at some level, and again, it could be subconscious, it doesn't even mean it's overt, but something has happened that at this moment, there are some kind of pressures on them, or there's something happening that's made them feel like, based on where I think I'm trying to go next and what's a priority for me at this moment, this isn't fitting the bill. And there could be a misunderstanding. It could be a true misalignment, or it could be that something's just changed for them. And I just cannot say enough. I feel like every time I make an assumption, I'm so sorry. And every time I ask, I'm so glad. So I would say ask, don't assume, and go back and say, what first brought you in? We've missed you. We notice you haven't been attending this. How is Rotary fitting in your life right now? What are your priorities at the moment? Not in an antagonistic implying that it has to be Rotary. I mean, they could have a parent that's sick. Like, you don't know. That's why we don't assume, we ask. So happy to engage more about that offline if that would be useful. I hope that was okay, Marty. I think
great.
there's still, I think the motive and value still thing is still useful, because people are people.
Okay, so it actually covers 2 areas in your answer, and that is, how does the club engage with its members? And we have a tool for that, the member assessment survey, which can be personally delivered, and just looking at it and then asking those questions that relate to why a member is not engaged or what they feel they need. And the other is the community assessment tool and how the club is engaged with their community. Equally important in keeping your club vibrant. So with a vibrant club, not only are you attractive to the community, you're attractive to new members and engaging your current members. So using those 2 tools as a way to start, and you've really kind of, without probably having seen those tools, you've actually spoken to what they say. So
And I
with that,
think,
and
Marty, I think what I've learned from selling is that it's just so, I mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to say it one more time because I think it bears repeating. It's so stunning when you ask other people to say back in their words what they find valuable. So I really try to remember when I ask for a review after someone does a class with me or something like that, I like to say, you know, what did you think you were going to get of it, get out of it? What did you end up getting out of it? Why did you buy from me? And the words people share are so interesting because they're not always what we describe as our primary value proposition. Quick example, I have all this technique that I teach as a part of selling, like these email templates. And I had someone tell me recently, all the stuff he's ever paid for. He's been to multiple things I've done. And he said, you know, the reason I keep coming to stuff is because you believe I can get better at selling, and that makes me believe I can get better at selling. Well, I don't have believe anywhere in any of my copy because I didn't know that was important to them.
Mhm.
Marty,
yes, George.
yeah, what we were taught today basically reverses everything I've ever seen or heard from Rotary International and from our district is how to sell Rotary. And I think the reason it reverses it, and I think it's wise to do so, is that our answers to anybody who says, what the heck is Rotary? We're so proud of it, and it has such a powerful history.
Yeah.
The only competition to Rotary in the world is probably the Gates Foundation. Our foundation has over $1 billion in it each year that helps our clubs create humanitarian projects. We've done more to get rid of polio than the United Nations and the US government put together.
Wow.
Okay? So we go on a bragging spiel. Okay, we always do that. I certainly do. And almost everyone I've seen for years has done that. And what you are teaching us, that may just waft right by a prospective person because it may say nothing about their own objectives and their own pathway to success. And so I think we need to take this very seriously and teach it, to start with what the prospect thinks, needs, feels are his objectives in life or her objectives in life, and not start with a bragging spiel.
Thanks, George. Thanks for that. And thank you for just being so open to looking at it a different way. I think especially piggybacking on Amir's question about how people buy now and appealing to the younger generation, you know,
Right.
that's useful, I think.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Catherine, are you open to listening to any more questions?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
If anyone else has, with respect to our time, we're a little over an hour, and I did have a few closing remarks. So if anyone else has a question, please unmute and speak up. If not, I want to thank you kindly for a very inspirational and interesting forum. Well worth everyone's time, and thank you so much for sharing as effectively as you have. In closing, I want to say to, and I'm muted, am I not? No, I want to say to all of you here, all of you are practice and proven leaders in whatever you do. And this is a diverse group from among many professions, from among many places, Canada to Bermuda. And that's fantastic. And I hope that what you take from this session, you spread around your zone, around your district, around your clubs, with a spirit of understanding that you are the ambassador for what you just learned. Your questions were most insightful and your participation most appreciated. You're all having completed, at this point, 2/3 of our 2021 membership training agenda. You're all invited to join our District 7230 Ambassadors Society. What's that? Well, you may never have heard of it because our committee got together and we thought about how you all deserve rewards for coming. And we're not giving away any toaster ovens or free swag from Russell Hampton. And we kind of expected that you'd be here together for your love of Rotary and for your club. And we kind of expected you to say, nothing's needed for us as a gesture or a reward. And you're right. So instead of giving you a toaster oven, we're bringing a call to action. For your participation in learning about embracing your belief in Rotary and your club and yourselves, and taking this to the next step, to the process of asking a trusted acquaintance, a friend, or a family member to join your club or another club that might be a better fit that they could enjoy. We will offer recognition to you at a luncheon of District 7230 ambassadors during the Spring District Conference coming up. We honor our successful leaders. We honor our Paul Harris Fellows. Every district does. And Rotary goes even further with Service Above Self awards, with Peace awards. It is recognition for people who step up beyond the pale, beyond what's expected of them. Bring forward your success stories as we go out today. Bring it into the future. Tell us about what you've been doing, and you'll be among an elite group who have bolstered the pillars of your club, and likewise have bolstered the strengths of Rotary International. If you stay on the call and we have a closing piece. It's sort of an aperitif. It's a powerful short TED talk about finding the why. Please stay and listen, enjoy, stay safe, and stay in touch with your district.
How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight? The Wright brothers beat them to it. There's something else at play here. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery. And this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operate in it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean, what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, A marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done. That's how most sales is done. And that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do. We say how we're different or how we better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat screen TVs. They've been making flat screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. And Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products, and nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. The goal is not to do business with everybody who needs what you have. The goal is to do business with people who believe what you believe. Here's the best part. None of what I'm telling you is my opinion. It's all grounded in the tenets of biology, not psychology, biology. If you look at a cross-section of the human brain, looking from the top down, what you see is the human brain is actually broken into three major components that correlate perfectly with the golden circle. Our newest brain, our Homo sapien brain, our neocortex, corresponds with the what level. The neocortex is responsible for all of our rational and analytical thought and language. The middle two sections make up our limbic brains, and our limbic brains are responsible for all of our feelings, like trust and loyalty. It's also responsible for all human behavior, all decision-making, and it has no capacity for language. In other words, when we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand vast amounts of complicated information like features and benefits and facts and figures. It just doesn't drive behavior. When we communicate from the inside out, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior, and then we allow people to rationalize it with the tangible things we say and do. This is where gut decisions come from. Sometimes you can give somebody all the facts and your figures and they say, I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why would we use that verb? It doesn't feel right, because the part of the brain that controls decision-making doesn't control language. And the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart or you're leading with your soul. Well, I hate to break it to you, those aren't the other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision-making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal and want to be a part of what it is that you do? Again, the goal is not just to sell people who need what you have. The goal is to sell to people who believe what you believe. The goal is not just to hire people who need a job. It's to hire people who believe what you believe. I always say that, there's if you hire people just because they can do a job, they'll work for your money. But if you hire people who believe what you believe, they work for you with blood and sweat and tears. And nowhere else is there a better example of this than with the Wright brothers. Most people don't know about Samuel Pierpont Langley. And back in the early 20th century, The pursuit of powered man flight was like the dot-com of the day. Everybody was trying it. And Samuel Pierpont Langley had what we assume to be the recipe for success. I mean, even now, you ask people, why did your product or why did your company fail? And people always give you the same permutation of the same three things. Undercapitalized, the wrong people, bad market conditions. It's always the same three things. So let's explore that. Samuel Pierpont Langley was given $50,000 by the War Department to figure out this flying machine. Money was no problem. He held a seat at Harvard and worked at the Smithsonian and was extremely well connected. He knew all the big minds of the day. He hired the best minds money could find, and the market conditions were fantastic. The New York Times followed him around everywhere, and everyone was rooting for Langley. And how come we've never heard of Samuel Pierpont Langley? A few hundred miles away in Dayton, Ohio, Orville and Wilbur Wright. They had none of what we consider to be the recipe for success. They had no money. They paid for their dream with the proceeds from their bicycle shop. Not a single person on the Wright brothers team had a college education, not even Orville or Wilbur. And the New York Times followed them around nowhere. The difference was Orville and Wilbur were driven by a cause, by a purpose, by a belief. They believed that if they could figure out this flying machine, it'll change the course of the world. Samuel Pierpont Langley was different. He wanted to be rich and he wanted to be famous. He was in pursuit of the result. He was in pursuit of the riches. And lo and behold, look what happened. The people who believed in the Wright brothers' dream worked with them with blood and sweat and tears. The others just worked for the paycheck. And they tell stories of how every time the Wright brothers went out, they would have to take 5 sets of parts because that's how many times they would crash before they came in for supper. And eventually on December 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers took flight. And no one was there to even experience it. We found out about it a few days later. And further proof that Langley was motivated by the wrong thing, the day the Wright brothers took flight, he quit. He could have said, that's an amazing discovery, guys. Now we'll improve upon your technology. But he didn't. He wasn't first. He didn't get rich. He didn't get famous. So he quit. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And if you talk about what you believe, you will attract those who believe what you believe. Well, why is it important to attract those who believe what you believe? Something called the law of diffusion of innovation. And if you don't know the law, you definitely know the terminology. The first 2.5% of our population are our innovators. The next 13.5% of our population are our early adopters. The next 34% are your early majority, your late majority, and your laggards. The only reason these people buy touch-tone phones is because you can't buy rotary phones anymore. We all sit at various places at various times on the scale, but what the law of diffusion of innovation tells us is that if you want mass market success or mass market acceptance of an idea, you cannot have it until you achieve this tipping point between 15 and 18% market penetration, and then the system tips. And I love asking businesses, what's your conversion on new business? And they love to tell you, oh, it's about 10% proudly. Well, you can trip over 10% of the customers. We all have about 10% who just get it. That's how we describe them, right? That's like that gut feeling, oh, they just get it. The problem is, how do you find the ones that just get it before you're doing business with them versus the ones who don't get it? So it's this here, this little gap that you have to close, as Jeffrey Moore calls it, crossing the chasm. Because you see, the early majority will not try something until someone else has tried it first. And these guys, the innovators and the early adopters, they're comfortable making those gut decisions. They're more comfortable making those intuitive decisions that are driven by what they believe about the world and not just what product is available. These are the people who stood online for 6 hours to buy an iPhone when they first came out, when you could have just walked into the store the next week and bought one off the shelf. These are the people who spent $40,000 on flat screen TVs when they first came out, even though the technology was substandard. And by the way, they didn't do it because the technology was so great. They did it for themselves. It's because they wanted to be first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. In fact, people will do the things that prove what they believe. The reason that person bought the iPhone in the first 6 hours or stood in line for 6 hours was because of what they believed about the world and how they wanted everybody to see them. They were first. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So let me give you a famous example, a famous failure and a famous success of the law of diffusion of innovation. First, the famous failure. It's a commercial example. As we said before a second ago, the recipe for success is money and the right people and the right marketing conditions, right? You should have success then. Look at TiVo. From the time TiVo came out about 8 or 9 years ago to this current day, they are the single highest quality product on the market. Hands down, there is no dispute. They were extremely well funded. Market conditions were fantastic. I mean, we use TiVo as a verb. I TiVo stuff on my piece of junk Time Warner DVR all the time. But TiVo is a commercial failure. They've never made money. And when they went IPO, their stock was at about $30 or $40 and then plummeted, and it's never traded above 10. In fact, I don't think it's even traded above 6, except for a couple of little spikes. Because you see, when TiVo launched their product, they told us all what they had. They said, we have a product that pauses live TV, skips commercials, rewinds live TV, and memorizes your viewing habits without you even asking. And the cynical majority said, we don't believe you. We don't need it. We don't like it. You're scaring us. What if they had said, if you're the kind of person who likes to have total control over every aspect of your life, boy, do we have a product for you. It pauses live TV, skips commercials, memorizes your viewing habits, et cetera, et cetera. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, and what you do simply serves as the proof of what you believe. Now let me give you a successful example of the law of diffusion of innovation. In the summer of 1963, 250,000 people showed up on the Mall in Washington to hear Dr. King speak. They sent out no invitations, and there was no website to check the date. How do you do that? Well, Dr. King wasn't the only man in America who was a great orator. He wasn't the only man in America who suffered in a pre-civil rights America. In fact, some of his ideas were bad, but he had a gift. He didn't go around telling people what needed to change in America. He went around and told people what he believed. I believe, I believe, I believe, he told people. And people who believed what he believed took his cause and they made it their own, and they told people. And some of those people created structures to get the word out to even more people. And lo and behold, 250,000 people showed up on the right day, on the right time to hear him speak. How many of them showed up for him? 0. They showed up for themselves. It's what they believed about America that got them to travel on a bus for 8 hours to stand in the sun in Washington in the middle of August. It's what they believed, and it wasn't about black versus white. 25% of the audience was white. Dr. King believed that there are 2 types of laws in this world, those that are made by a higher authority and those that are made by man. And not until all the laws that are made by man are consistent with the laws that are made by the higher authority will we live in a just world. It just so happens that the civil rights movement was the perfect thing to help him bring his cause to life. We followed not for him, but for ourselves. And by the way, he gave the I have a dream speech, not the I have a plan speech. Listen to politicians now with their comprehensive 12-point plans. They're not inspiring anybody. Because there are leaders and there are those who lead. Leaders hold a position of power or authority, but those who lead inspire us. Whether they're individuals or organizations, we follow those who lead, not because we have to, but because we want to. We follow those who lead, not for them, but for ourselves. And it's those who start with why that have the ability to inspire those around them or find others who inspire them. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for attending and for sharing with us. We hope to see you again soon. Enjoy the holiday season with your families, with your friends, and the very best of health.